Oi! Hello everybody, my name's Sumner.
And I'm Allie.
And in today's video, we're gonna be discussing the difference in cost of living between Brazil and the United States in 2020. We'll try to keep everything as efficient and concise as possible. Two things to keep in mind. So number one, we're discussing cost differences or cost of living differences between two of the largest countries in the world. So there's gonna be variance within each of the countries itself, but we're gonna do our best to kind of summarize and give our insight into that as best as possible. Number two is the conversion rate between two different nations are obviously gonna change over time, whether increasing or decreasing. Right now, as of the making of this video, $1 US is right around 5.6 Brazilian reais, or for Americans in English, real or reais, but in Brazil, reais. Yes. I think.
Yes.
I'm not the expert, she's the expert. So.
And that's one of the highest conversion in a long time too.
So yeah, keep that in mind, it is one of the highest conversion rates. And where we're recording from right now is sunny and beautiful Florianopolis, Brazil. And where we're living is one of the most expensive places within Brazil as well, based on our research. So again, we're gonna do our best to kind of lay everything out and compare apples to apples. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it.
Okay, point number one, accommodations. So like Sumner said, right now we are in Florianopolis, which is one of the most expensive cities in Brazil. And we have been staying in different Airbnbs. So we thought we would compare what would be most similar to what we're doing here in the US. So instead of comparing to our apartment that we had in the US, we wanted to compare to a place like San Diego, which we think is most similar to what we get here by being in Florianopolis. A place that is coastal. It is more expensive than the average place in the country. So right now, our Airbnb is a 1-bedroom. We have the entire apartment to ourselves. We have a kitchen and it's walking distance to the water.
Yeah, very short.
Yes, very short. It is about 150 reais per night, which comes to about $26-30 per night. Or
American dollars.
American dollars,
yeah.
Yes. Or about 3,200 reais per month, which is about 600 American dollars. And you do get a certain discount when you do a full month through Airbnb, or at least most places you do. And then a similar place in San Diego, walking distance to water, would be around 60 American dollars per night, or $1,500 per month. So around double, well, for the night, double to triple the price, it depends, and around double to triple for a month as well. Yep. So big difference.
Yeah, big difference. And of course, like we said before, within San Diego or within Florianopolis, you can find Airbnbs cheaper or more expensive depending on what part, or kind of on the outskirts or right near downtown or whatever it might be. And I'd also like to add that, so we actually used to, for those of you who are kind of new to the channel, Allie and I previously lived in Cincinnati for years before moving and kind of living abroad. And our Airbnb, this Airbnb and all the Airbnbs we've lived in so far in Brazil have all been cheaper rent-wise, significantly, than even our apartment in Cincinnati. Yeah, it was a 2-bedroom apartment, but it was, in a neighborhood kind of out from downtown, a little bit more pricey, but not super pricey.
With utilities included was about $1,500. So, I mean, when you rent Airbnbs, everything's included too, as far as I know, in all of our experience. So we love staying Airbnbs, and that's why we recommend it too, even better than hotels for cost of living too. And like Sumner said, there is a wide range of prices. This is usually the price that we choose. I don't know if you consider us choosy or not, but we like good quality, but we'd never go.
Yeah, but the moral of the story is it's much cheaper to rent in this category. It's much cheaper. And what you'll find, kind of a spoiler alert, is that in a lot of these other categories, that you'll find that Brazil overall is less expensive, especially with the conversion rate. However, certain categories are like slightly less, cheaper or more inexpensive, where other categories are much larger. And this is one of the biggest for us. It's one of the biggest ways we've been able to actually reduce our overall living expenses is by renting Airbnbs here in Brazil. Much less expensive, and you can get some pretty, like I said, we have whole videos talking about our favorite places in Brazil to go and visit, so we won't do that in this video, but really worth the value. Eating out, because we know everyone, including us, love to eat out. So in the United States, you can expect at a nice kind of sit-down casual place. So not something super, high-end or gourmet, but something a little bit more casual, but nice. You can expect with a drink and a full meal around $20. Could be a little bit less, could be a little bit more. Right around $20 per person.
A non-alcoholic drink.
Yeah, non-alcoholic drink. Yeah, which I'm sure all of our American friends know, but right around $20. And then on the kind of upper end, right, you could easily spend $60 per person. Again, maybe a little bit less. Absolutely can go more if you want to go to Gordon Ramsay's kitchen in Vegas or wherever. But $20 for a nice kind of sit-down casual. $60 for a more gourmet meal. Beer, being around $5 a drink. Cocktails being $9 a drink. With this kind of average, in Brazil, you can expect a nice sit-down lunch place or dinner place, something a little bit more casual but nice, to be around 40 reais, which would come to about $7 American dollars per person. For something more higher end, more gourmet, you can expect to spend around 80 reais per person. Of course, again, could be much higher, could even be a little bit lower, but about around 80 reais. So around 14 or 15 American dollars. For drinks, you can easily find some good beer for around 5 reais, which would currently translate to around $1. So $1 drinks, alcoholic drinks, it's always fun. And cocktails around 25 reais, 5 American dollars. So overall, regardless of what you're getting, if you're gonna get a much nicer meal, more inexpensive meal, you're gonna get drinks. Overall, it's gonna be much less expensive, and of course, you can get it even lower depending on what part of Brazil you're in. Could even be a little bit higher, but overall, it's gonna be much less expensive, and it's almost addictive.
It is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and this is a similar price too when you order in, like on apps like iFood or Uber Eats.
Yes. True.
And you don't have to tip, just like in the US. I don't think you have to tip. But
it's good to tip, but
it's good to tip, but it's not expected at all.
Yeah, exactly. It's not as much part of the culture. We still do because they just kind of have it, and we like doing it. And by the way, when you're tipping, 5 reais, you're tipping $1. That can make their day, and it's really not that expensive for you. And we like to do that when we're ordering out. Yeah. And then also, just another little tip is when you go to any of these restaurants in Brazil, there's a flat 10% tip. That's it. It's included. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to do the calculations afterwards.
Yeah, it comes on the bill already.
It comes on the bill, 10%. So yes, there is the tip that you need to consider when ordering and when kind of sitting down in a restaurant. But you don't have to do the math and figure, is it gonna be 15? Is it gonna be 20? Is it gonna be 10? It's automatically taken out, which is kind of nice because usually when we were in the US, we tipped a little bit more than 10%. Yeah. Not only is food much cheaper here in Brazil, but it's also delicious, right? It's not just cheap, but it's great quality, right? You can find awesome all kinds of food, from sushi to authentic Brazilian dishes and all kinds of food depending on where you are in Brazil. It's a must try, and be sure to follow us for more videos we'll be posting specifically about different Brazilian dishes and breakfasts and our trip to the grocery store and all that kind of fun stuff. So yeah.
Point number 4 of our Brazil cost of living versus US is groceries. Like Sumner said, we do like to eat out, but we also like to get groceries. We do like to keep things more inexpensive, and we work a lot of times from our Airbnb, so we're always cooking and buying groceries nearby. In the US, we usually spend around $500 per month in groceries. And again, this can be a lot cheaper or a lot more expensive.
And it's for just us
for two people.
No kids,
yes.
Just us.
For 2 people. No kids, just a kitty, but she's very inexpensive. So for perspective, a 6-pack of beer in the US would be around $8 or $9, a loaf of bread around $3, and a dozen eggs around $2. Here in Brazil, in Florianopolis, a 6-pack of beer would be around 28 reais, which would come to $5 or $6. The loaf of bread around 5 or 6 reais, which would be $1, and a dozen eggs around 8 or 9 reais, which would come to $1.50. And here per month, since we've spent more than 1 month already, we spent around 1,400 reais per month, which would come to around $250 per month. So pretty much half of what we used to spend.
Half. And something I will say, there are some ingredients that you might miss. Again, we have full videos kind of talking about the options here of food and groceries in Brazil versus the US. But there are some ingredients here that are much better from what I found than the US. Even simple things like the garlic is a little bit more fresh, some really awesome different baked goods that I love. Different meats, the eggs. It's a lot easier to find kind of what you would call farm fresh eggs in the US. So it's not just cheaper. Again, going back to the point, there might be some groceries that you can't get because it is a different country, but you can get some even better ingredients cheaper. So it's Yeah, it's rent's less, groceries are less, eating out is less.
Another good point is that for anything that you buy here in Brazil, taxes are already included. So in grocery stores in the US, for example, it depends where you are. I think it depends by state. I don't know if it varies by city. But yes, it varies the sales tax that you pay on top of that price. But here in Brazil, if something says 5 reais, you're gonna go to the register and they're gonna charge you 5 reais.
Yeah, that is,
everything is included.
I will say that's very nice. And that goes for groceries, that goes for clothing and other items, which we'll talk about here in a second. Is one of the things I dislike that I don't miss at all from the US is having that kind of hidden like, oh, here's all the taxes, like, oh yeah, just kind of like same thing with tip and all that kind of stuff. So for transportation in Brazil versus the United States, we'll quickly cover the cost difference between Uber as well as renting a car. Because a lot of cities in Brazil don't have the best infrastructure for public transportation. And honestly, in a lot of cities, I wouldn't really take, there are, I think, quite a few public buses for some of the major cities.
Yeah, but we don't usually.
Yeah, we personally have never taken it. I don't know if I'd necessarily recommend it. I'm not dissuading you one way or the other, but maybe I am. I don't know. But we don't really take it. So in order to kind of get around what we usually use and what we'd recommend, and we see a lot of other digital nomads using, are Ubers and rental cars. So for Uber, in the United States, again, depending on the time of day and the area and all of that, of course, but you can expect it for a 30-minute Uber ride to be around 35 American dollars. Okay, for that same Uber ride, right, 30-minute Uber ride in Brazil, you can expect to pay 35 reais, which comes to about 6 or 7 American dollars for the current conversion rate. So it's much less expensive. There's even been a couple times we've ridden just to go to the grocery store like 10 or 20 minutes, and it was like $2, maybe $1.
There was one that was $1.30.
$1.30, yeah. So it was just crazy inexpensive for what we're used to, of course. So Uber rides tend to be very inexpensive, and for us, Ubering, we've done the calculations ourselves, and for us, in the amount of time that we travel, and something for you to kind of consider when you're living abroad, is that we found that Ubering actually, or ride sharing, costs us less than renting a car for our unique circumstances. But again, it depends on how often you're going out.
Yes.
So that's with Uber. And by the way, also in Brazil, in most major cities, Uber is very well developed. I think some Americans have had questions about that. Like, is there even Uber in Brazil? Yes, there is, and there's a very big presence in Brazil, and it continues to grow. Very well. I've had great Uber experiences.
Very safe.
Yeah, very safe and all of that. So good and very inexpensive. For rental cars in the US, for something basic, kind of economy, but nice, you can expect to pay somewhere around $36 a day, with gas being around $3 a gallon. In Brazil, you can expect for that same type of economy, kind of basic car, to spend around 60 reais per day, which comes to about 11 American dollars, with gas being around 14 reais, which comes to about $2.50 in American dollars. And again, that's with a relatively high conversion rate. So that's one of the things here in Brazil that may not be that much less expensive and may actually be a little bit more expensive than the US is gas. So again, depending on the conversion rate, it's just something to keep in mind. Like you said, when traveling abroad, just do your own kind of research and see maybe for the amount of time that you're gonna go out, using Ubers and relying on ride sharing services could actually be less expensive than renting your own car.
Not to mention, 2 good points is that here in Brazil, the most common type of cars are manual transmission. So if you are not used to it, if you don't know how to drive it, and you want automatic, it will probably cost a little bit more too. So that factors in. We use the manual transmission for our calculation just because it's the most equivalent to what we get in the US. And another good point is that gas here, if you come in and you see a much less expensive price, is because it's in liters, not in gallons. So we did that little calculation for you to get the 14 reais, just so you know, but yes.
Yeah, it's correct. Yeah, the metric system, right?
Yes.
I mean, who uses that?
The best.
I'm just kidding. Yeah. So that's what to keep in mind when purchasing and using transportation in Brazil.
Next would be grooming and beauty. So like we've mentioned before, here in Brazil, services are so inexpensive. It's actually one of our favorite things about coming here. And it's good to point out too, like we talked about before with the food, is that here in Brazil, we don't tip on services. So all of the prices that I'm gonna tell here in the US, you would most likely still add on tipping. And in Brazil, no tipping required or expected. So for example, men's haircut. in the US, a men's haircut or a nice men's haircut would cost around $25, and here in Brazil would be around 40 reais, which would come to $750 American dollars. And you've actually had good experiences here with your haircuts.
Yeah, I will say actually, it feels overall, I've been to a few different barbershops here in Brazil in a few different cities, and every time my experience has been great. Like very, very almost professional. Always offering additional, do you want to do stuff with the eyebrows or trim or whatever.
You even got
different
a beer.
Product. One barbershop actually gave me a beer. There's like, oh yeah, you're from the US, here's a beer. I was like, okay, thanks. Included with it was like $7 for the haircut. But yeah, great quality. They're very professional, super great service consistently that I've personally experienced. And even got a free beer. So it's a really much more professional, much more of an experience, and it's even cheaper. So it's not just like a cheap haircut. It's nice. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yes, and then for women's haircut and blowout, in the US would be around $40. I've seen some a little bit cheaper, definitely seen more expensive. And in Brazil would be around 90 reais, which would come to about 16 American dollars. So that's really great. A lot of women here do it every single week. Not necessarily the haircut, but definitely the styling because of how inexpensive it is.
Yeah, I go at least once a day.
Once a day.
For a blowout.
But okay, another service would be manicure and pedicure. And that was probably one of my biggest surprises when I moved to the US was how expensive manicure and pedicure was. So in the US, it would be around $60 to get both, and plus tipping, like I said. In Brazil would be around 50 reais. You could even find cheaper, but average is 50 reais, which would come to around 16 American dollars. So that's really great. Again, a lot of women go every single week or every other week to get their nails done. I'm not one of those women, but it is great if you are one of those women, and great inexpensive. And our fourth service that we had to talk about is one of our favorites because we always love doing this when we come to Brazil, which are massages. And in the US, in our opinion, it's pretty expensive to get massages. It's around $90. I've seen very few cheaper than that, and I've seen a lot.
Yeah, for about an hour massage.
Massage, yes.
Many of you maybe have never got a massage or don't really have the desire.
Yes.
It was just crazy. That was one of the biggest things that blew my mind is because I'm working on a laptop all the time. I get super tense. I try to exercise and stretch, and still sometimes it feels really nice to get a massage. In the US, for about an hour massage, a decent, not even a higher end.
Yes, no.
Super, and I haven't had really great experiences in the US, at least compared to Brazil, around $100.
Yes.
Where in Brazil,
$100, and we've seen closer to $250 lots of times, easy.
For higher end, yeah.
Higher end. In Brazil, it's about 80 reais, which comes to about 14 American dollars. And the best part is that the masseurs actually come to you.
Yeah.
I mean, they have massage places here as well, but in this instance, for example, the masseuse came to us, set her little table.
Yeah, it did, and it was a full hour.
With all the equipment,
cupping and some other things too. It was, it almost felt like cheating about how inexpensive it was compared. That was one thing that's so much cheaper and better quality. It's better and cheaper.
Amazing.
So you guys gotta try it. Try it if you haven't tried it before. Maybe it's a good time to try it in Brazil. But just something that we like.
So service is definitely worth getting here in Brazil. A lot of times, honestly, people pay, it's so inexpensive that people would pay for services even when they can do something just because of the hazard. I mean, it's so inexpensive, why not pay for someone else to do it? But so that's beauty and grooming, and that goes with a lot of other services in Brazil as well.
But what about healthcare? So ladies and gentlemen, obviously the United States totes its prowess for having phenomenal healthcare, right? And it's also known that the United States has some, more expensive healthcare, right? Or at least that's kind of the stereotype, and that's partially true. So obviously, I'm not that knowledgeable about different surgeries and kind of some of those higher end, very expensive things that deal with cancer or diabetes or heart related issues or brain surgery. Hopefully, God forbid, you never have to get that if you're living or traveling abroad in Brazil or in the United States or wherever you are. But that's not what we're really talking about. On a more day-to-day kind of, for checkups, for going to the dentist, for blood work, for things like dermatology, which is something I'll talk about in a second. Overall, the services are going into other services are much less expensive here in Brazil compared to the United States. And in my experience, again, I'm not a medical professional, so I can't really test, but highly, highly professional. And in a lot of these professions, I don't see how the Brazilian doctor knows anything less than your American doctor. There's some stereotype that...
Definitely not for general.
Yeah, for general,
knowledge,
exactly.
Yeah.
Again, not talking about specialized and what I just discussed about cancer and all those kind of things, I don't know. But in terms of general, like I said, checkups and dentists and all that kind of thing, we have relatives and friends who are doctors and dentists and all that here in Brazil.
You're the best.
Yeah, it's... In my view, it's the same quality in Brazil as it is in the United States, and much ridiculously cheaper. And of course, Brazil also does have the free healthcare system. It's not really free because it's paid by taxes, but if you are visiting, I believe it is free. You can enroll. Usually, we both use private practice because it still is very inexpensive.
It's a big hazard to go to. You may spend the whole day at the hospital.
Exactly, long lines
expecting something free, and it's so inexpensive to go to a private doctor.
Exactly.
It's much easier. You schedule an appointment, you show up. They're usually late, but okay.
Yeah, maybe a little bit late, but and then just a couple examples. So for blood work, that's something, you hear about blood work, like, oh, so what are you, like super rich? You're talking about getting your blood work done? Everyone should be getting their blood work done, getting checkups. But because of how expensive it is in the United States, many, many people, you can look up the data for yourself, do not get it, and it's very, very unhealthy. It's not good. And just for example, right, blood check in the United States, it's around $120 to get a blood check, okay? Like full, blood samples, all that. In Brazil, that same exact service, same quality, around 65 reais, which would come to, what, is it like?
$12.
$12, yeah, 12,
10
14.
times cheaper.
Yeah, 10 times cheaper, about 12 American dollars, where it would cost $120 in the United States. Much cheaper, same quality, okay? When it comes to dermatologists, that was something kind of random, but the reason I bring it up is because I went to the dermatologist. I had a little viral thing on my hand, some warts. Went to the dermatologist in the US, and all they did was it was like a 15-minute consultation. Basically just put some liquid nitrogen on it and said, if it comes back, come back.
10 minutes.
Yeah, about 10 minutes, literally. $480 American dollars, okay? In Brazil, we just, I want to do a checkup just to make sure everything's good. And the exact same service, actually better service, a lot more attentive, asking a lot more questions, doing a lot more research, prescribing different things. And ultimately, I saw much better results from the Brazilian dermatologist. And that was around, what, 250 reais?
270 to be precise.
270 to be precise, which comes to about 50 American dollars. Which is, $480 for 10 minutes versus $50 for much more in-depth prescribing and all of this kind of stuff. So that's just one example, right? But the same kind of applies to a whole host of different services. We won't go into all the details, but just something to be aware of if you're just planning a vacation or if you're planning on living, look into some of the different health services provided in Brazil. You may find that they're just as good quality as the US and much cheaper, and maybe you can actually be healthier and live a healthier life than you could in the US. That's at least what we're doing and kind of trying to take advantage of this.
Yeah, we usually wait and don't really go to some of our doctors back
depending
in the
on what it is, yeah.
Depending on how soon we're gonna come to Brazil, and we do everything here. Like we're just planning on going to the dentist soon.
Yep.
So yes, it's much cheaper, much more worth it.
So something to keep in mind if living abroad or traveling in Brazil.
The last thing we wanted to talk about is cost of goods. So in general, the US actually offers pretty inexpensive options of goods. Here in Brazil, even with the conversion rate, things can be maybe a little bit cheaper to the same price or even more expensive. For example, clothing, I would say, is pretty comparable because of the exchange rate, or even cheaper than the US. But things like electronics or cars, for sure, because of the lack of manufacturing in Brazil compared to the US, there's not as much variety. So actually the prices are higher than the US. In the US, there's so many options, there's so much variety. If you want to buy a camera, oh my gosh, you can easily find
and there's variety in the United States because there's manufacturing.
Yes.
So a lot of these new tech products, so if it comes to, I'm not as knowledgeable about cameras and things like that, but iPhone, Microsoft with computers, and a lot of different kind of newer technology, either started in the US or there's a lot of American-owned manufacturing. Same thing with cars, obviously with Ford, Chevy, GM, all these different car brands. And because of the manufacturing there, they're able to compete, right?
With foreigners.
And drive costs down overall. Where in Brazil, they can't really compete. They rely on the imports of other countries, and that's why prices for those goods tend to be higher, along with, I think, taxes as well, tacked on for certain goods.
Yes.
Brazil does tend to have a higher
Cars,
tax.
for example, the taxes is ridiculously high. It's crazy because there's not a lot of Brazilian brands. I actually can't think of one from the top of my head. Brazilian car brands manufactured. So everything, most of what we have is imported. So we can't really compete to drive the price down, like Sumner said. So yes, in general, cost of goods is, depending on what you're talking about, is similar to the US or more expensive.
I know it was a little bit long, but hopefully you found the video helpful, whether you're planning to travel or maybe even live in Brazil, which we definitely recommend and love. And to find our other videos about our adventures here in Brazil and elsewhere, be sure to subscribe and check out the other videos that we have here on the channel. If you found the video helpful, be sure to give us a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Anything that you found insightful, anything you thought we were missing. Let us know if you're in the US in a certain city. Let us know how off we were about our pricing. If you're in Brazil, do the same thing. Again, we know it's a very big country, so we'd love to hear your input about that as well. Be sure to comment below, like the video, and follow for more. Yeah, and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, beijo.
Ciao.